Business Connections Live, the UK's leading online business channel. This is Business Connections Live with Steve Hyland.
Hello and welcome to Business Connections Live, the program for entrepreneurs, SMEs and also business owners. Now on today's show we're going to be discussing how big business experiences can help SMEs. Yes, businesses just like yours. Joining me in the studio today is Michael Johnson. He's the Managing Director at AA Financial Services. Michael, it's lovely to have you with us today. I think there are a lot of small businesses out there that don't really understand that the same problems that they're going through are the problems that organisations the size of the AA also go through. You're doing the same processes on an ongoing basis. When you're out there, I mean, what's the key things that you're looking for within business?
As you say, Steve, I think it's the same with any business. You've really got to approach it with a method and without too much emotion. And I think the first thing you've got to do when you're setting out on any venture is really understand the market. And understanding the market is probably the first place that you've got to start, because without that bigger context, you'll never be able to position your product or your service or whatever it is you're developing in the right way.
So before we get onto the process that you would go through, let's find out a little bit about you. So what's your background?
About me, well, I work at the AA, as you pointed out, Managing Director of Financial Services, and we're currently taking to market a number of financial services products designed for AA members, anything from mortgages right through to credit cards. Previously, I've worked in many business development, innovation, sales and marketing roles for some great brands, both here and other places in the world, likes of people like British Telecom, Orange, Thomas Cook, Santander, and everything I've done has always involved the element of innovation, developing products and taking those to market.
Do you think there's a mindset difference between a large corporate brand, be it, you know, BT, Thomas Cook, be it the AA, a large corporate brand, and the single man entrepreneur? Are the processes the same, or you know, what's the similarity between the two?
I'm sure the processes are different, because the larger the company and the bigger the corporation, probably the more they've got to protect. So there's a lot more checks and balances in place, whether it's legal, compliance, or whether it's the financial director giving you a hard time about how much money you're investing. There's a lot more people to satisfy or to get permission before you do things. In a small business, you're really on your own to a large degree. You might have shareholders, you might not. Nonetheless, it's a pretty lonely existence in a small business. But I'd suggest that the processes of getting something to market, or indeed doing something new, should be the same, or at least follow a similar thought pattern.
Looking at the mindset of the corporate market as opposed to, shall we say, the individual, the SME, the small organisation, is that a very different mindset? For instance, within an organisation as large as yours, things will happen regardless, a bit like an oil tanker, isn't it? It just moves along and it will just happen. Whereas a small single man operation, an entrepreneurial business that's in startup or whatever, everything is driven by the individual. Do you think we miss that perhaps maybe in the large corporate market, that entrepreneurial drive?
Yeah, I've got no doubts that in any large corporation there are pockets where what you did yesterday is what you're going to do today, and obviously we try and fight against that. An entrepreneur has the advantage of being very close to his customers, and there's not many people in the way. And in a large corporation, the best way to innovate is by being very close to your customers. But as you can imagine, in a corporation of 30 or 40,000 people, you're a small cog in a very big wheel. So it is hard to have the same mindset as a very determined and passionate entrepreneur who really might believe about the thing that they're doing. So there is a different mindset, I think.
As you've gone from business and organisation to organisation, do you see the same issues raised each time? And if you do, what are they?
Yeah, the issues are generally the same. And I'd say from my experience in some large organisations, you're always trading off speed and quality, because in essence you're part of a big machine and we all want to do things quickly, but in order to do them at the scale that a big machine does them at, you've got to put quality and checks behind it. So we're always trading that off, and that can be frustrating for somebody working in a large corporation. I think at its heart, though, the common problems seem to be not understanding your customer and just not being close enough to understanding the customer's need and trying to fit what you've got to offer to that need. That seems to be a common grappling point, and one we get wrong often.
Do you think that is just unique then to the corporate sector, or do you think the not understanding your customer can actually, that problem can actually be applied to small business owners as well?
Yeah, I'm confident it can be applied to small business owners as well. I think the thing which brings it more into relief in a small business is that people are very passionate about what they do. So sometimes they're not prepared to acknowledge the issues or the conflict that they may have with what they're doing and the customer's acceptance of it. So whereas in a big business we're a bit clinical and a little bit removed, in a small business quite often you're very close to the issue and you don't look at it necessarily objectively, and therefore I think it's a balancing act.
Do you think in a large corporate that for the individual the risks are removed? For instance, a single man operation, an entrepreneur, somebody who is starting out, they are taking all the risk, and yet we, or they as entrepreneurial people, turn to large organisations for that experience. They look to large organisations for the expertise that is already there. Do we lack that risk, that feeling of failure within the large corporate?
It's an interesting question. I think by definition, you're generally in a large corporation, you're not putting your money at risk, which a small business owner or an entrepreneur would be. So therefore, the day-to-day pressures on you are more so in a small business, because not only are you worried about the success of your business, you're also worried about the success of you as an individual and how you're going to explain it to your family if you've got it wrong and have somehow lost their money. I wouldn't say there's a lack of passion in a large organisation, but I suppose the risk is disseminated across so many more people and so much more infrastructure that there could be a risk that people don't take it seriously enough, or people don't put the customer at the heart of what they're doing.
What lessons do you think large corporates could learn from the entrepreneur, from the small SME, if any?
No, there's definitly lessons.
Or is there a whole book that could be written on that?
Obviously, and there are several books that have been written on that subject matter. If you asked me 10 years ago, I might have given you a different answer, but today it's speed. And speed is everything, because from the very nature of producing this product that things can be disseminated quickly. People can innovate quickly. A good idea yesterday is not necessarily a good idea today. So in a nutshell, for me, in today's world, the thing that we lack in big business, that a small business owner has a natural ability to do or to exercise, is speed.
What about when it comes to some of the tools that the small SME is using? I mean, we hear a lot about social media, things like that. Is that something that comes into play for a large corporate like yours?
Social media is another indication of how the world is changing and how we interface with either news, information, products, friends, whatever it happens to be. Social media is a key platform, and it's an example of how you can get your word or your message out to a lot of people very quickly, and let's face it, at a pretty good cost. So it's harder for a corporation to flex that social media muscle, because in a way you're infringing on people's day-to-day lives and privacy. So sometimes there's a reluctance from the consumer to have a large brand interfering in the social media sphere. I suppose the test is for people like us that work in those big organisations is how can we use that channel to its advantage without offending people or putting them off.
How can you extend trust through that channel? I mean, is that the issue, that because you're big, because you're large, therefore you're not trustworthy, or is it, or are you working on brand identity and things like that?
I think trust is a really good point, and for different products and for different sectors, trust could mean different things. Obviously, if you're in financial services like I am or we are, then trust is a huge issue. If you're in another sector, trust might not be that important. So I'd say first it depends on the sector, but fundamentally your point is right, and I think the biggest thing about trust is not trying to interfere with people unless you've got something to say that is relevant to them. So if you're in a social media context and you're just blasting the airways with traditional advertising, then that will be rejected. But if you're finding a way to understand the customer and present a product at their point of need, then I'm sure that will be welcome.
Listen, we're going to be going through the entire process when it comes to maybe the lessons that can be learned for a large organisation and what can be applied to your business. Maybe you're an SME, maybe you're an entrepreneur, maybe you're watching this and you're thinking to yourself, you know, I'd like to start my own business. What lessons can be learned from a programme like this one today? My guest in the studio is Michael Johnson, Managing Director, AA Financial Services, and a difficult area as well, I would imagine as well, because financial services, a bit of a jungle out there. We're going to be coming back and be talking to Michael in just a few moments' time on this edition of Business Connections Live. Still more to come on the programme. You're watching Business Connections Live. Don't forget, we're live every Monday, 12 noon. It's great to have your company. And do keep all those different responses, those emails coming in to the program. By the way, if you'd like a show just like this one, I'll tell you how you can go about doing that a little bit later on in the programme today. Tell you what we're going to do right now. We're going to look back at last week's programme, another cracking show. We were looking at digital marketing and how you go about using social media. The real opportunities, we kind of alluded to it there but a moment ago. Social media is becoming so powerful. The trouble is a lot of people see social media as part of their selling tool. Well, really, it's part of their marketing tool. You know, you get out there, you inform, you excite your potential customer out there with the social media. It's a bit like bringing the horse to water, but can social media actually be used to make the horse drink? Well, it was a question that we looked at in last week's edition of the programme. My guest on the show was Mark Tillotson. He's the Managing Director of Tillotson Consulting. It was a fascinating insight into how the social media can work for any size business. If you missed the entire show, it's a bit of a snippet of what happened in last week's edition of Business Connections Live. On today's show, we're going to be discussing social media opportunities for businesses into 2016 and beyond, because it's an ongoing thing. Social media is growing, but it is changing. It's a bit of a changing feast out there at the moment. Social platforms come, social platforms go, but you as a business, are you using them most effectively? Are you really getting your message out there? And probably more importantly, which we're going to find out today, when you do engage with your audience, what happens then? Do you collect their names? Do you talk to them? Do you have a clear call to action? Joining me in the studio today is Mark Tillotson. He's the Managing Director of Tillotson Consulting, a digital marketing agency.
People using the wrong tool for the job. And people very often think, okay, there's this kind of silver bullet that social media is, and instead of paying for search traffic on Google or doing SEO, that actually the answer to their prayers is we'll generate sales with social media. I think that's one of the biggest things, is people's expectations of what social media will do are kind of misguided. You know, there's very much a lot of people get hung up on the how many Twitter followers do I have, or how many Facebook fans do I have, and that's probably, just going back to your question, what the biggest mistakes are. That's a huge one, because the quality is way more important than the quantity. The search marketing, whether that's paid or through SEO, combined with brand awareness through social media and a great website that converts that traffic into sales, that all together works far better than just doing pay-per-click or just doing social media. So that term, search engine optimization, means optimizing your website, your web pages, your content for a search engine. Okay? What people mean when they say SEO is rankings on Google and traffic. In terms of purely as an SEO question, is a tweet or a Facebook post valuable? Does Google index that? Does it pass some value? The short answer is no. However, yes, they are. The argument is, if you want to create backlinks and if you write a great piece of content that's really valuable, which will earn links automatically, then how do you get that in front of people to earn those links in the first place? And that's where social media does fit into an SEO strategy. SEO is certainly, the SEO side of it is a technical kind of art form, if you like, but it's much more now about marketing than it is about digital. I think one of the key things with social is picking one platform and doing a great job, rather than the common mistake, which is I've got to do Facebook and I've got to have a Twitter account and I've got to do Pinterest and I've got to do Instagram, and trying to do everything and doing a kind of mediocre or a poor job on all of them. So generally I would recommend, pick the platform where your audience is and the one that you're comfortable with, because you're going to be spending quite a lot of time there. 20% of your tweets should be promotional. I would say that's probably a maximum. 30% should be interesting. Did you know, by the way, here's a blog post of how to do stuff, whatever it might be. And the last 50% is probably the most important, which is the E, which is predictably engagement. Actually talking to people. So I'm Mark Tillison. I'm a sales and marketing geek and MD of Tillison Consulting. We work with small businesses, large businesses, to help them generate more leads and more sales online. One of the methods we use to do that is social media, as we've been talking about today. I would say the key things that you need to do with social media are, first and foremost, just pick one platform. Don't try and do them all. Pick one platform where your audience is and that you are comfortable with, and really commit to doing that. Measure the engagement. Make sure you are measuring this to see how you're improving. Measure the engagement, measure the reach if the platform has that, and also measure the traffic that's coming through to your website. And if people are actually buying or contacting you, again, measure that as a conversion. And that's really, really important to do that. And commit to it for a period of time. This is not a quick win. This is not something you can do for a week and get some results. This is really going to take weeks and months of effort. I would say, if you're going to distill that down into one thing, Twitter is a great platform to start with. It's probably the simplest out of all of them. Engage in 1 hour a week in a Twitter chat, and there are a huge list of those. If you just Google Tillison Twitter chats, you'll find a list of over 400. They're all divided up by location and the type of industry, and I'm sure you will find a good chat that works for you once a week for 1 hour. And even if you do nothing else, just do that once a week and see how you get on.
Mark Tillison there from Tillison Consulting. He's the Managing Director, and a great show. If you do get the opportunity, please do go to our website. Dead easy. We're actually everywhere at the moment. You can find us on YouTube, you can find us on Stitcher, you can find us on Blueberry. Please subscribe. If you're on iTunes, please do leave a 5-star review. We would really appreciate that. And I did say that if you wanted a show just like this one, maybe for your brand, for your organisation, well, why don't you have a chat with us? We can put together a custom programme just like this one, maybe interview your key personnel, bring them into the studio, and we can find out what makes your company tick. It's a great way of communicating with your clients, a great way of communicating with your customers as well. If you want more details on that, all you got to do is drop us an email if you wish. Here's the email address. It is studio@businessconnectionslive.com. If you want to just have a quick chat with either myself, Steve Highland, or Linda Bazan, then why don't you give us a call on 01784 256 777. Don't forget, you can follow our stream of consciousness as well at BCL Business TV. That's on Twitter. And don't forget you can leave comments or get involved with us on our Facebook page at Facebook/Business Connections Live. It really is as simple and as straightforward as that. And listen, we look forward to talking to you in the near future. Your comments are really important to the programme, so don't just sit there on your hands. Get in touch with us here at Business Connections Live. You're watching Business Connections Live. Great to have your company with us on the program today. We're talking to Michael Johnson. He's the Managing Director of AA Financial Services. And we're kind of musing over the points when it comes to what lessons, the big lessons are that a large corporate, like shall we say the AA, can actually show as an example to entrepreneurs, SMEs and small business owners. Is it the same? Is it a level playing field, or are the two so different that many of the rules that apply to one don't apply to the other? And that really is what you're saying. Many of the rules do apply to both sides of that, don't they?
Indeed they do, and I think, you know, business is a thing, it's a philosophy, it's a process. So therefore what one company might find successful, I'm sure others would find successful.
Now, you put together for us very kindly a process of how you take a product to market, which is, I think so many companies just have a real issue with that. I mean, there's one point coming up later on where we all believe that we have created the best mousetrap. And we will fight hammer and tongues to actually get that to market, even though it may not be right for market. And we'll cover that a little bit later on. But let's kick off where we start. How do we go about establishing our product? I mean, what's the first stages in product development? What do we need to do when it comes to getting a product ready and identifying that we actually do have a product at all?
I suppose, Steve, what I would recommend anyway is starting with the big picture, because unless you start with the big picture, it's pretty hard to understand where you're headed or what role you play within that big picture. So I think the first step in the process that we spoke about is just understanding the market. And that's understanding the sector or the category or the market that you as a business wish to play into. And I suppose when I talk about understanding the market, there's generally a few things that you'd have to come to grips with. Things like, how big is it? Is it growing or is it declining? Are there any particular characteristics about that market where the consumer or the customer is different? Do you understand it at that detailed level? Because if you were an investor wanting to invest in a business, then I suppose the worst thing you could say is that you were in a very small market and it was going backwards. So if you were in one of those markets...
Bad market.
Bad market.
Yeah, note to self, bad market, yes. So how do you research a market then? For an organisation like yours, you have the pound notes effectively to go out there to do market research. Are there ways, are there quick tricks that you can use to actually research a market where it doesn't cost you quite so much? I take it you don't do it by gut feel, though.
You have to have an element of gut feel, there's no doubt about that. But in the end, you have to rely on data, and data will be the cornerstone of the whole plan that you're putting together. And I think there are some shortcuts or some less expensive ways to get data. Generally, there are industry bodies or there are sectors that have peak bodies that information is available for. So if you're an electrician, there's a peak body that looks after electricians, and they will hold a lot of industry data that you could have access to for free. Another example is the government. The government's divided, as you know, into a number of portfolios and sectors, and most government departments keep very good statistics and information about the sector that they happen to be managing or dealing with. If you have a little bit of money put aside for this exercise, then I'd recommend going to some specific consumer or industry research bodies such as Mintel or YouGov, and they have spent the time and the money analysing particular industries where you can find a wealth of information that will help you size or profile a market.
When you're profiling a market, when you're looking at the marketplace, is what the product is all about, what it does, does that influence the amount of research you have to do? For instance, you're in the financial sector, so there's something like, 4,000 different financial services or products available out there at the moment. So if you're approaching that as a market, you've really got to do your research, haven't you? So the smaller business, the smaller innovative entrepreneur, when he's actually looking at a marketplace, probably the research isn't going to be as in-depth as yours is.
You're right. That's right. There'll be differences, and I think by the very nature of small businesses and entrepreneurs, they probably have a more personal or ground up view of the sector that they're going into. So I wouldn't recommend they need to go to the same expense or time as somebody in a big corporation analysing the market that they may be removed from, and in some cases, unfortunately, may have no interest in.
Mm-hmm.
That would be different for the small business or the entrepreneur. So I'd say you would already have interest, and it is worthwhile gathering the data, but don't go to the nth degree. A 60 or 70% view will be enough.
The old 70-20, isn't it? Or 70-30 or whatever. Yeah.
Whatever it is, yeah.
So, all right, so we've understood our market. At this stage, I suppose what we're trying to achieve, we're trying to say that there is actually a need for what we're thinking about doing. Yeah. What's our next step? Is it then looking at customers for it? Do we have to do research with them?
Yeah, I think this is the most vital step in the whole process, because here's where you pivot out of an idea and a concept to do with a market to now focusing on the actual person that's going to hand you money for the thing that you're offering or proposing. So unless you understand the customer at an individual level and at a group level, it's going to be very hard to write that business plan and be confident that what you're about to do is the right thing to do. And in my experience, one of the biggest mistakes that large companies make is just not understanding the customer well enough.
What about the small entrepreneur, though? Does he understand? Because a lot of entrepreneurs will be out there and they will make a product for themselves, won't they? And that is that the converse of what you're saying? They don't understand the consumer, the actual customer, and the entrepreneur is making a product. He too doesn't understand either, because he's making it for himself. He is the consumer.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I suppose in marketing language we call that the marketing test of one. And of course, the marketing test of one is never going to be sound. And there's a natural human condition to want to see things through your own eyes, and I think you've highlighted that point. Yes, you've got to go beyond that. You've got to be talking to customers on the street. It might be something very informal. I think I was speaking to you earlier about when I worked at Thomas Cook. I stood outside a Thomas Cook store and just interviewed customers who were coming out. The reason I did that is I wanted to just hear what they would say about a new idea. And because they were coming out of a Thomas Cook store, I knew they were interested in travel. They just hadn't randomly walked in there for no reason. So that was a really cheap way to do some customer research. Of course, you'll all have family and friends. Most people have got a very wide circle of friends and family that they can speak to, because they're usually consumers or customers of some description. Right through to, a bit like we said before, if you have a little bit of money to invest, then it wouldn't go beyond the realms of reason to set up a focus group where you're bringing in people to a studio, not unlike this, to have a chat about your products, and you know that what you're going to be receiving from those people is an independent view, because they have no vested interest in you. You're wasting 2 or 3 hours of their time and they're going to give it to you pretty straight.
In your experience, have you seen people go through that process and still so firmly believe in the product that they have? They're so passionate about their own product that they nearly don't believe the focus groups.
Yeah, I've heard that said many, many times. If a focus group brings out a positive message, the normal thing to say is, "Oh, I knew that all along," or that was self-fulfilling. If the focus group comes out with a negative message, then you generally point to 1 or 2 people in the focus group that were too vociferous or were too influencing the others with their views. So you tend to make up conclusions to suit your own argument. And my advice is you cannot do that. You have to be completely unbiased when it comes to the message you're hearing from the customer, but don't forget to be completely passionate about the product and the service that you're wanting to bring to market. So in a way, you have to become quite schizophrenic, passionate on one side and unbiased on the other.
Is it? I mean, it's something that a lot of people forget. They They never get into, and I hate using this cliche because it's used by a number of organisations, but it's getting in the customer's shoes, isn't it? And it's trying to be the customer for a few moments. Whenever I hear that expression, I was thinking, and if you can find their slippers, get in their slippers as well. But it is trying to understand and to talk with the voice of the customer, isn't it?
Absolutely. I learned, having been in financial services for a while with different organisations, I don't think I'm saying anything out of turn here when I say I used to do business with a company called MBNA. You may recognise the name from being a credit card provider.
Other credit cards are available, by the way. Yes.
Yes. And the interesting thing about MBNA is across every doorway in their organisation, there's a saying, and it says, put yourself in the customer's shoes. So even when you're passing into the bathroom, it says, put yourself in the customer's shoes. But this was a relentless way of that organisation reminding its people that at the end of the day, any product that they sold or any product that they developed or anything that they wanted to do new had to start with the needs of the customer.
And did that ethos within the business, did it work?
Well, I suppose I never worked for them, so I can't really express how it felt from the inside. But I do know one thing: they were the most successful providers of credit cards in some very large markets, and they didn't have a banking background. So maybe the results speak for themselves.
All right, listen, we're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the other parts of this whole process. And I mean, for instance, looking at the proposition, what is your proposition for your business? Is it a clear proposition that you have? How do you test it? And more importantly then, how do you take the whole thing to market as well? So it's really that whole sales process that we're going to be looking at, all the way from development, coming up with a great idea, and then turning it into something that is going to be, well, it's going to make you your fortune in your entrepreneurial world. I hope you're enjoying this edition of Business Connections Live. My guest on today's show is Michael Johnson, Managing Director, AA Financial Services. You're watching Business Connections Live. Great to have your company as always on a Monday. Hope you're enjoying today's show. I think it's really interesting, Michael, to actually get somebody to come in. I mean, the large corporates, we have a lot of people that come in from our SMEs and small business owners, but it's so different coming in from the other side of the glass to actually see the perspective that you get in a large corporate organisation, that you are actually experiencing some of the issues that the smaller business will have.
Very true.
So it's very, very interesting. Right then, let's look back. We want to give you as much great advice on the programme as we possibly can. And of course, when you're in the position of launching a brand new product, what you've got to be able to do is you've got to be able to stand back, and you've actually got to be able to, well, you've got to be able to sell that product. You've got to influence people. You've got to highlight the things that are right about your particular brand, about the product that you've got in front of you. And you need to just be able to grasp the right words and to paint a picture, and then deliver on that picture that you've just painted. Sally Hindmarsh, she joined us on the programme a little while back, and she gave us some great insight into how you should go about really having impact in what you say, and how you should influence people so that you get the right result from that. Just to give you a bit of a taster, here's Sally Hindmarsh.
Okay, my name's Sally Hindmarsh and I run a company called Partners With You, and my key takeaways would, when you're presenting, remember that the audience is just like you. So use words and terminology that you and they will understand without a dictionary. Work on your voice beforehand so that your muscles of your mouth, your tongue and your lips are working so that they can hear what you've got to say. Use your eye contact so that they're listening to what you've got to do. And my final tip would be stand up. Stand up or sit up straight so that you look alert and interested.
Sally Hindmarsh there, and a real insight when it comes to having impact and influencing people. I just love some of the lines actually. By relaxing more and being themselves, most people are able to communicate much more effectively and are taken more seriously. That one piece of advice from Sally is well worth listening to. If you want to watch the entire programme, simply go to our website at businessconnectionslive.com. By the way, you can download all the programmes and watch them maybe on your smartphone, on your tablet or whatever, by simply going to iTunes. And what we'd like you to do is to leave a 5-star review for us on iTunes, because that helps the programme, helps us bring you the show each and every week. It's dead easy to do. All you've got to do is follow these simple instructions. Just go on to iTunes, click on it there, click View in iTunes. That'll take you to this page here. Click on Ratings and Reviews. Pop, there we go. And then leave us that 5-star review. Tell us what you like about the show. Tell other people why they should be watching it. 5 stars, that's great. And a big thank you for all the team here at Business Connections Live if you do that. So thank you very much. And do leave that review, that 5-star review. See, I'm using NLP on you now. You leave that 5-star review about how good the programs are on iTunes. That'd be a great help to us here at Business Connections Live. You're watching Business Connections Live. My guest on today's show is Michael Johnson, Managing Director at AA Financial Services. We're talking about some of the lessons that can be learned for the entrepreneur, for the small SME, that they can learn from large corporate organisations. As I said, Michael is from the AA, involved with financial services. Now, there's a tough old market for you, I would imagine, at the moment. What we're going to do right now, though, is we're going to continue through the process that we've been going through. We kicked off with understanding our marketplace, something that both large organisations and small organisations have to do. Understanding our customer. Are we passionate about our product? Are we unbiased as well about what our product is all about? And can we take a kicking? If they think it's rubbish, then maybe it is. That's a tough job, isn't it? It's a tough call. And then the next stage really is to have a clear proposition. What do you mean by having a clear proposition?
Yeah, having a proposition is really important, because it's insufficient to say I'm selling you a box and it's blue. Really, you have to understand what is different about this offering or about this service that you're wanting to provide. It generally starts with what are the benefits. So having consumed this service or this product that you're offering, what are the benefits it's going to bring me? That's the first part of a proposition. The next part of the proposition is, why is it unique? Because let's face it, there are going to be competitors out there, and one of the great things about being involved in a dynamic marketplace is having competitors and putting yourself above them, hopefully. So uniqueness. Also, how does the customer get it? What's the process that the customer has to go through to consume it? Is it very easy process? Is it a very lengthy process with lots of forms and lots of qualifications? These are all the ingredients that, when you put together, make up a proposition. And generally, you're wanting it to be simple, affordable, quick and easy. And if you can describe that as your product or the thing that you're about to take to market, then I'm sure you'll be successful.
When you start and you're looking at your own product offering that you have, at what point do you consider price? Because you see this with a lot of SMEs, entrepreneurs, small business owners. They feel that they have to market their product at a particular price point. They're buying the market by selling cheap.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, and I wouldn't take pricing lightly. It would be fair to say the more unique and more special your product is, the higher the price you can command for it. There's nothing wrong with competing on very simple products, but price will be more important, and if you're out of the market, you won't sell anything. It's basic demand-supply relationship. So I think price has to be thought about and thought about and thought about, and you really have to pick a price point carefully. The good thing is, if you're a small business, you can change very quickly. So if you're not getting the take-up that you expect day one, then day two you can change the price and see what impact that has. One of the things I like to come back to myself is the competition. I had a boss tell me once that you're only as good as your competition. It's a bit like when you're on the football field. You're only as good as the opposition will let you play. Price is a key ingredient to how you're going to interact with the competition, because you're either going to send them the signal that you're after their market and their market share, or that you have something so unique that you can command a better price for it. And you, as the small business owner, are going to have to pick that path, and it's not an insignificant task.
I mean, you're in a position as a large organisation where you can do loss leaders and things like that, where you can draw people in. The small entrepreneur may only have maybe one product. So he can't do that. So I take it he has to step back for a moment and consider very carefully where he's placing it along with its features and benefits within the marketplace.
That's right. It's important to realise that once you've figured out your proposition, you really need to have a business plan or a feasibility study or a set of numbers that just proves that if you sell something at a particular price, you're going to make profit. That's fundamental, unless, of course, you're a charity or you're doing things out of the goodness of your heart. But most businesses aren't based that way, and especially small businesses that have shareholders. Those shareholders, again, may be family and friends. They're not going to be happy if their equity or their money or their investment is being frittered away because you're pricing something too cheaply. So
have a clear proposition, know what you're doing with it, know what the benefits are for it, make it simple, make it engaging.
Yes.
All right, so that's having a clear proposition. Now, the next bit is probably the most difficult bit because it's now market testing. You alluded to it earlier on that you would stand out. People would have been talking about you standing outside of shops and talking to strange people. But the whole testing thing is something that a lot of small businesses will skip over. They won't do that. You, as a large organisation, I take you test everything to the nth degree. Is that right?
Where possible, we test everything to the nth degree. If you are having a manufacturing product, if you're producing something, then you can imagine some large organisations would go through extremely rigorous testing processes to get something to market. Not only are there health and safety issues, a product that doesn't survive its first days out there is just going to be returned and you're going to have to refund a customer's money. So testing from that perspective is essential if you're manufacturing something. Personally, I've been involved more in service industries, whether it's telecommunications, financial services, etc. What you're testing here is generally the proposition, and does a customer understand what it is you're trying to either sell them or offer them? And so testing can probably divide into two camps in that case. It can be the more informal stuff that we spoke to before, or it can be the more formal kind of testing, which could be conducted with focus groups or could be conducted in what we call omnibus surveys, where you pay people to put questions about your product into a survey that may be going to 3,000 or 4,000 people. And that way you can get instant feedback on how the market or how a particular customer may feel about your product. Now, it costs money, but it's probably not out of the realms of feasibility for most small businesses.
I can see that working for service products. What about where you've actually got a piece of hardware that you're putting together? Here I am, I've built the most incredible widget in the entire world. What do you do when it comes to widgets then? Do you build prototypes with the view that perhaps it will or will not work?
Yes, I think definitely you have to build prototypes, and I think with widgets you've got to find out there in the marketplace the widget expert and give them free rein to try and break or test or put your product through the mills. There are larger organisations like Which who will test products, and if something's gone through the Which testing, then it probably comes out with a pretty good seal of approval. And they're testing new products all the time and may be prepared to test new products from a small business that is bringing those to market.
On a smaller scale, what about things like bloggers and that who get prototype products? And of course the way some of the seed funding, or not the seed funding, but the funding is done these days, where you offer that out, crowdfunding, where you offer out maybe a product at a reduced rate so they know they're part of the development of that particular product. Do you see that as a good idea and a good development?
It is a good development. It would surprise most of us to understand how many people love getting involved with product testing, and some people make it their sort of hobby to be involved in either focus groups, special interest groups, bodies that test products, and there's always a bunch of able people out there that would be willing to test a product out for either no cost or very little cost, just because they're interested in trying to break something or trying to find its flaws.
Well, that's really interesting, and it could well be a way actually that you should be maybe considering. The thing that's interesting, there are a lot of people I think out there that launch products and they don't really realise what the flaws are. I mean, there are some manufacturers out there these days that tend to use their customer base nearly as the as the testers, which is no names, no pact rule. We won't mention any of that right now. You're watching Business Connections Live. It's great to have your company, as always, with us on the program. My guest today is Michael Johnson, Managing Director of AA Financial Services. OK, we've talked about the testing of our individual product. What about the actual, taking the product to market? That's the next stage on. We've tested it. What do we say? Where are we going now?
Yeah, I think here's where, if you've passed through all the hurdles to get to this point, then this is the point where you can't afford to lose focus, because now, from this point on to the end result, is where you're going to spend a lot of money. Because you've gone through all the intellectualizing, you've gone through the testing, you've gone through the convincing yourself, you've probably prototyped it. Now it's time to take it to market. And depending on what you do will depend on the success or the outcome. I generally work to something we call the 4 Ps. That may be a little bit theoretical, for some people, but really you're talking about just nailing just a few points on this business plan to make it come to life.
Right then, so the 4 Ps then in 2 minutes are?
Right, okay. We've mentioned it before, you've got to get the price right. That's fundamental to any business plan. The product itself, or the proposition, has to be right, and it has to be articulate and easy to understand. We also have to have placement, which is the distribution channels, and we'll come to that a little bit more, and positioning. So how are you positioning this product in the big wide world? Is it the best of the category? Is it the cheapest of the category? Is it the most unique? Is it the most fun? Whatever is the positioning will give your overall marketing context a different flavour and influence the other 3 Ps that we spoke about.
What about the actual product itself? Do you see a lot of people will sit and consider their navel before actually pushing the product out there?
Yeah.
They just won't get it to market.
Yeah, I think at this point you're asking people to invest. So therefore they'll come up with every excuse why it can't go out. Right? So, for example, we spoke about distribution or placement. Quite often, for a small business, you're not going to have a branch network like Thomas Cook or Santander to distribute products for or through. You're going to have to probably engage in partnerships where people are distributing the product for you. Now, I don't know if you've ever been involved in trying to sell a product to Tesco, but I have. And that's an incredibly daunting exercise, to be facing one of their buyers and trying to convince them why they should take the product to distribute through their stores. So, not only is it daunting, but it's costly, and you'll have to invest time in meetings and providing prototypes and providing research and data as to why your product's going to be successful. And this causes navel gazing, because it's not a pleasant exercise to get out and sell your wares and put yourself at the risk of failure every minute, but it's essential.
This is navel gazing. If you are a navel gazer, maybe you should just push that product out there. A lot of us sit there for a long time and we look at emails that we should be sending out. Perhaps you've got a CRM system and you just can't get the system put together properly at the moment, and you're thinking to yourself, one day I shall have the right email that I will send out en masse, but you just never do it. Stop navel gazing, just get it out there and get some reaction, if any reaction. You're watching Business Connections Live. Great to have your company. My guest on today's show is Michael Johnson, Managing Director, AA Financial Services. Well, good to have you with us today, as always. Hope you're enjoying today's live programme. If you're thinking that Michael is just fantastic, a fantastic orator, and you'd like to do that, maybe you would. How would you feel if somebody was to approach you with a camera to ask you for a comment about your particular business? How would you feel if someone was to approach you and ask for a radio interview about the product that you've just developed? Would you be able to put together the appropriate comments, the appropriate sound bites that the media would want? If you're not, then we run a training course for that. It is called How to Handle the Media. You can come on a day course where you can have your employees around you, your team around you, your other directors around you, if you wish, and you can actually present the camera. We put you in an environment where you'll be talking to camera, you'll be going through interviews, and you'll be doing radio interviews as well. As I said, it's called How to Handle the Media, and just to give us a bit of an insight into that course and what he thought about it, here's James Griffin from Iris Software. He brought his team on one of our training courses, and they had a thoroughly great day. Have a look at this.
I'm James Griffin from Iris Software, and my team have just completed the How to Handle the Media workshop. It was a really great course, it was really fun, and it was a really unique way for them to polish their presentation skills and learn how to answer difficult questions under pressure. So I'd highly recommend this to anybody that values those skills and really wants a great day out with their team.
James Griffin there from Iris Software. It's a great day out. If you want more details about that, simply contact us here at studio@businessconnectionslive.com, or if you want, you can give us a call on the old dog and bone on 01784. There's the telephone number, 256 777. Follow our train of consciousness at BCL Business TV, or you can watch the programmes live every week and leave your comments on our Facebook page. You're watching Business Connections Live. My guest on today's show is Michael Johnson, Managing Director of AA Financial Services. We've been talking about the process of bringing a product to market, which has been a real insight. We kicked off with understanding the market, how to understand the customer, how to have a proposition about what your product's all about, how you should go about and the importance of actually testing it, and then what you should do about taking it to market. We were just talking about navel gazing. A lot of businesses will do that. They will sit back, they will look at their navels and never bring the product to market. I suppose within your organisation and other organisations of a similar size, you've just got to get on with it. You've got to have a time scale, and it's going to be launched come hell or high water. Are there ever a moment when you do navel gaze and you think, actually, this product isn't ready and we're not going to launch it?
I think that's right. Hopefully that would have come out previously in your testing or your prototyping, that kind of information. But I think you hit the nail on the head, Steve, when you said you've got to have a deadline. And in a big business, like some of the ones I've worked in, it's imperative to have a deadline because things will always go slower than what you think they will. In a smaller business, you may be more fleet of foot and in control of your own destiny more. But nonetheless, you would have a deadline. Once you're out, then here's where you've got to have nerves of steel, because if things aren't working or the product's not getting the reception that you thought it would, or there are problems with the issue, you have to stop. And that's just as hard as having started, because to stop something that you're passionate about and you're invested in and all your life's energies have gone into, that is a really hard thing to do. But the biggest mistakes I've seen people make is not launching the wrong product, it's not stopping the wrong product.
Right.
And that has been the downfall of many businesses in history and some of the ones I've been involved with. And to your point, again, navel gazing can't come into it, because if that product is out there doing you damage or sucking up your finances, you've got to stop it and regroup and go again.
What about when it comes to over-investing? Is this the same? Over-investing in time, over-investing in money? Are they paramount to the same thing?
Yeah, I think they are. I think time is money, right? So, hopefully we've got lots of both, but in the end, most of us don't. So you've got to economise in your investment in time and your investment in money. And I think this is where we were saying before, you have to be ruthless, because you can't get back time and you can't get back money. So you have to approach it ruthlessly. And this is the key art of business at this end, when you're talking about new products and services, is as much as you're passionate about what you do, you also have to be ruthless about what you do, and sometimes save your powder or your money for another day.
Do you have to be brave to do that, though?
You do. I think you have to be brave, and I think you have to be self-conscious and aware, because time and the passion can just get away on most of us. And if you speak to people that have not done well in business, it'll generally be because they have made a mistake in judgment about backing something that was never going to work.
Okay, now listen, we always ask all our guests when they come on the programme to give the key takeaways from the particular show, and that's what we'd like you to do today, if you don't mind. It's been a real insight into how a large organisation, like in your particular case the AA and the others that you've worked with beforehand, actually do put this strategy into place. So there's a real insight into that. The key takeaways of, what the entrepreneur, what the solopreneur, what the small business owner needs to remember when it comes to the brand or the product that they are taking to market. We always invite our guests to look straight down camera number 1 over there, say who you are and where you're from, and and then simply just take it away. The airways are yours. Take a breath. And what are the key takeaways that we need to remember?
Great, thank you. I'm Michael Johnson. I'm Managing Director of AA Financial Services, and we're talking about taking things to market and some of the things you should be aware of. For my money, it's about having a plan, and having a plan means, firstly, you need to be passionate about what you're doing, but you also need to be objective and ruthless about some of the decisions that you'll make along the way. The plan that I would recommend sort of starts at the top with the big picture, such as understanding the market. Once you've understood the market and where you fit, you would then understand the customer and understand the customer's needs, because there's no point producing a product that doesn't meet a customer's needs. From then, you would go on to define your proposition, to test and prototype your product, and then take it to market with a well thought through business plan. And hopefully from there, it's plain sailing.
Listen, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the programme today. It's been a real insight. I do hope that you, as a small business owner, you've found that you're in a position now where you can actually take some of those big corporate lessons, and what you can do is that you can actually turn them around and use them within your particular business. Hope you found today's show a real insight. And as always, what we try to do is we try to bring business experts, that expertise from the large organisations to the programme. Can I say, first of all, thank you very much indeed for being with us on the programme today. It's been a real insight. So thank you very much indeed. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's programme. Let's do the housekeeping. That's what we do every single week. Let's see what we've got coming up in the future for you. Vic Williams on opportunities for SMEs post-Brexit is a show that we've got lined up. Of course, we had our big Brexit debate. It was a great show. This is really the kind of follow-up. Where are we going and how are we moving forward in this world of Brexit? You can find out on that edition of Business Connections Live. Ginny Carter on why you should write your own business book. Have you ever thought about having your own book? How many authors have you seen out there? How many entrepreneurs have you seen who have come along and said, yes, and you can get my book? It seems to carry an air of gravitas about it. Well, should you be writing your own book, and how do you go about doing it? You'll find out when Ginny Carter joins us on the programme. Linda Shaw on NLP for Business. I love NLP. We'll be finding out more with the science of emotion. Don't forget, if you're watching us on Cambridge TV, it's great to have your company with us as always. You can see us on Freeview Channel 7 and also Virgin 159. Tell you what, it's time to get out of here. Let's run those credits. From all the team here today, thank you very much for your company. Hope you've enjoyed today's show. Let's do it all again live next Monday when we have another edition of Business Connections Live. But from me and all the team here, have yourself a fantastic week and a successful one. Bye for now. Bye-bye.